Hello, everybody. This is Natalie Bruner with the YWCA. I am the Division Director for Race and Gender Equity Advancement. I just want to say, first off, thank you, Carrie Ann, for the office use, for being with us here today. We are going to have Mickey Valbrun Pope. She's a COO over at the Valbrun Consulting Group. Hello there. Where she has done some amazing work within the Broward County Public School System. And we're going to be talking about Women Equality Day that's coming up on August 26th. So as a sort of a precursor and understanding of what the day is about, what it really means to be a part of this day, we're really on the day. And so she's here. Let's see. And she's going to be joining us in. There we go. Hello. How are you doing?
I am well. I am well. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for joining us today and for just sort of coming on and sharing your knowledge. And so I always love to start off with saying, what wonderful person are we talking with today? So can you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Sure. And thank you for having me this morning. So my name is Michael Valbrun Pope. No one knows me as that name. Everybody knows me as Mickey Pope. And I am an educator, first and foremost. I'm currently the COO of the Valbrun Consulting Group, which is a minority women-owned organization working with school systems across the nation, as well as nonprofits and for-profit organizations who are looking to build more inclusive spaces, develop intercultural competence, and those who are looking to leverage diversity in order to meet their clients' needs as well. And for really the past 38 years as an educator, I've worked in this area. I worked for both New York City Public Schools and Broward County Public Schools, and over the last 15 years, focusing on diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice.
That's so awesome. I'm going to ask you about the difference between the school systems and another conversation because I'm so curious about that.
Okay.
but but getting into a little bit of sort of why we're here today. So coming up is Women's Equality Day. And so we're going to commemorate the 19th Amendment and sort of the ratification of that amendment for women to vote. Tell me a little bit about that because I got some thoughts about that and we'll dive into that in a second.
Of course, the women's suffrage movement that led to the 19th Amendment and what we celebrate around Women's Equality Day is huge. And it really was a 30 plus years of push and work on behalf of women in our history to really get the equal rights that women we enjoy today. But specifically, the right to vote was number one on the mission. And there are always in every story there are concealed stories and there are resilient stories, right? And we hear the resilient story in when we learn about the women's suffrage movement. What sometimes is concealed is that there were huge numbers of African American women who were themselves further marginalized and further oppressed and with very little rights, civil rights, and who also participated in that movement. And so that's a concealed story that I think, as we talk about this and as we teach our young people around how we got to where we are, today in terms of the privileges that we engage, we receive, that there are, there's the story, and then there's the story of resilience, and then there's the concealed story. So all of that really needs to be brought out in this space.
No, that's awesome. And that's sort of exactly kind of what I wanted to hit on is there's an intersectionality piece that we often don't talk about where there are not just African American women, but, Native American women,
Mm-hmm.
Asian American women that didn't get the right to vote when we're talking about the passage of this 19th Amendment that didn't come till later on.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of see that as sort of a what's going on today, right? And so the voting is another thing that's popped up today again. Like I thought we got amendments. Like why are we going through this again? So Can you tell me a little bit about that, and some of the, just to help people understand like what we're still going through and we're still
Mm.
fighting for when it comes to voting rights?
Yeah. I know that, part of our focus today is about taking action.
Mm,
A strong focus of today is about taking action. And I think it is so critically important to as an educator, to educate and to teach the history and facts of the women's suffrage movement to young people, speak to the concealed stories, of course, but we have to frame it within the larger context of civil rights, human rights, and justice, so
right.
that they can begin to see and connect the current situation, current legislative actions that are taking place right now across, I believe, 18 states are taking action to limit voting rights. And not just the voting rights of women, but the voting rights of African Americans would be disproportionately impacted by these laws. And these laws are restricting the right to vote. They are taking away the early voting, making it more difficult. They're imposing harsher voter ID requirements, which we know will disproportionately impact people of color. And they're making they want to throw out faulty voter documentation, rather than looking to correct them, and among other things. And I think that it's so important that, again, we frame this conversation around what's happening currently, understanding the fight, that occurred for over 30 years to gain these rights, and to now be at a place where we're at risk of losing some of the rights.
No, that's a great synopsis of it. And so trying to connect it to what can we learn from sort of the women's suffrage movement, that passage of the 19th Amendment that they were able to accomplish to apply to sort of what we're seeing today.
Um, we can definitely learn, again, the resilient story, the concealed story, and we can learn from the activism that occurred during that time, to really push legislation to make the changes happen, and to become activists ourselves in the fight to maintain the voting rights that our early sisters fought for over 30 years, again, including the prominent African Americans and people of color. Um, and to play a very active role in pushing to not have these be reversed. So I think that
No,
there's space
yeah,
for learning there.
that's awesome. And so when it comes to sort of helping people to be an activist, they hear you, they feel you. What can they do? We gotta take action, right? So what are the actionable steps as someone that says, okay, I hear you, I want to do something. What can I do right now?
First of all, really take a look at your realm of influence. Okay, where is the opportunity within your reach, to speak the story? Again, both the narrative and the narrative that's not told. Um, Take a look at where, again, within your realm of influence, that your organization, whether it's your church, whatever sorority or fraternity you might belong to, um, your community, where in your community can you take action to speak to your legislators, to gather and send a collective voice against what's happening, and absolutely, definitely vote every opportunity that you get for every election. Vote. um, and jump through those hoops if you have to, while you're fighting having to jump through those hoops. Some other things I think is support organizations that are working to do that. If you have the means financially, if you have the means in terms of time and volunteering, to do that, support organizations that are working to elevate girls and women, and those that are by women for women. Um, Help everyone recognize the historical disenfranchisement and marginalization of girls and women of color. That includes transgender girls, and really consciously be inclusive in the conversations that we're having about this, and to also just be, scream it from the rooftops if you need to, if you have the capacity to do that. So activism can take, a number of different forms, as long as you're doing something to push against these things that are happening now.
No, those are some great tips. Go out there, do something, talk to somebody about it, support organizations. Shout out to the YWCA.
Absolutely.
To go and vote. Oh my goodness, that seems like such a simple thing. And when you talk about these laws that are being passed, that are trying to be passed, that are trying to take away this this right that so many sort of fought for and really pushed for. There needs to be a realization that, you know, this wasn't given easily to you. You may have been born into it, but everybody throughout history had not been born into it. And so to take some respect to do that. And so I know some people that actually like just refuse to vote. How do I get them to get up? And yeah, that's what I say too. That is exactly what I say. Help me help them to realize how to get out there and do what they need to do.
I think that, you know, it's sometimes preaching doesn't help, and sometimes just, you know, insisting doesn't help. I think, again, understanding the history, understanding the resilient stories, the concealed stories, how helping them see themselves in that history, which it was so important for me to point out the fact that there were African American women who were further marginalized at that time, who played a role in helping to, you know, through the suffrage movement and helping to pass legislation, and whatever role they could play. So to help folks understand the importance of that, and the importance of their voice, because sometimes people just feel that, you know, I'm only one and my voice doesn't matter. But to watch and see how small those folks' voice were at the time that the suffrage movement was going on, but yet they stood tall in that voice, and they put themselves out there, sometimes in dangerous situations, to fight for those rights. It might help to get folks to realize that their voice does matter, and that they can play a role in making a change. And you know, I like to say to people, you know, when they say I'm only one, it really doesn't matter. There's a Haitian phrase that goes, urine of mosquito augments the river. And it really translates to, you know, every little bit helps, or every little bit counts. And really, you know, taking it to this, every voice, every vote counts and augments the river.
No, that's a good way to put it. Hi, Carrie Ann. So when it comes to sort of just getting them to realize those stories, and I'm just going to push a little bit further as we sort of dive into this. There's been even an attack on these stories, like you said, those hidden stories that aren't told, that aren't mainstream, that aren't in our textbooks. How do we find those stories? How do we protect those stories? How do we make sure people hear those stories to help them understand what really is happening, what needs to be done?
I think the more we tell them, you know, in spaces like this, and again, in every space that we're in, the more we learn about them, because they were very, very much hidden. The more we learn about them, and the more we tell them, the more that they will become more mainstream. And you know, again, as an educator, I can't help but to go there and to speak to, you know, what we expose young people to. So much of the concealed stories are hidden from what they're hearing in schools, and what they are hearing even in their communities and in their homes. I think that we all play a role, and we all have a responsibility to reveal those stories, and to speak to our young people in particular, who have been so far removed, you know, from these stories, from the facts. We have to play a greater role as organizations who serve communities, who serve young people, and get these stories out however way we need to get them out for them to be able to hear it. I know, you know, social media is a huge avenue for young folks. So,
Yeah.
you know, how do we engage social media to get these stories out and to motivate them? You know, how do we get into the forums where they are, to get the message across? And how do we engage them in activism and in telling the stories to their peers is an important piece.
No, that's a great point. So, social justice on TikTok, everybody, get out there.
Absolutely.
So, I loved the concept of getting them, sort of young people, involved in activism, giving them, empowering them, sort of letting them know they have a role in this fight. it's not just an adult sort of thing, but they are involved in this too, and they have power and agency to be able to make changes. When it comes to kids, so I got two little boys. How do I sort of help them to start to be able to move towards saying what can they do? What can I help them to be able to figure out how they fit into this movement?
Yeah, it's you know it's so important when you bring up boys and men, that people don't see this movement as the responsibility of women and girls, to address. So often, the work is shouldered by those who are most impacted, right? And so boys and men need to see themselves in this space, to really elevate the voices of women in every space that they're in. We know, when women rule, the world is a much better place, right?
I
So,
agree.
and when we have a seat at the table, there's a perspective that we bring that men and boys, as much as we love them, men and boys cannot bring that perspective. So helping your young men, your boys, to value the voices of the women in their lives, and to help them push back on patriarchal systems, and to bring women, in at the top, at the middle, and at the bottom, to create a pipeline for women to rise, and to continue to value their voices and to elevate their voices as much as possible. And it's all of our responsibility to make that happen. And so that's a message that I think boys and men need to hear.
No, I appreciate that, and thank you. I try, especially when we're like watching TV, and so we got to point out what's wrong with this cartoon and this scene right now, so that we don't let it sort of sink into our minds. But I want to leave some space for you to add. It's Women's Equality Day. What should we know as we're about to close out before we go and get ready to commemorate it on Thursday?
I want to take the opportunity to call out the names of the Black Americans that participated in who are suffragists, and that is Ida B. Wells Barnett of Chicago, a leading crusader against lynching; Mary Church Terrell, who was an educator, so I had to call her out, and first president of the National Association of Colored Women; Adela Hunt Logan, Tuskegee Institute faculty member, who insisted in the articles in the crisis, in a publication called The Crisis, of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And her statement, which I love, is that if white women needed the vote to be protected, for their rights, then Black women, who are victims of racism as well as sexism, needed it even more.
Mm-hmm.
So just really wanted to, again, elevate the voices of people of color who played a role in this, and helping the connection for those of us of color who are dealing with this situation now.
No. Oh my goodness, what a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Miss Mickey Pope.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I love having you on here, and I'm gonna come back at another time and ask you about that comparison between those two school systems. So don't worry.
Okay, it's a deal. Anytime. My friend Carrie Ann is a longtime friend. We go way back, and anything to support the YWCA and to support her and to support you. You have a new friend of mine with you, Stephanie. And so it's just, magic all around with all of you. So my pleasure.
I feel the love all through IG. I love it. So thank you so much for being here with us today. This is our Take Action Tuesday. You've heard things that she said to do. Go out there, be an advocate, vote, talk to who you need to talk to about this. Commemorate Women's Equality Day on August 26th. And this is the YWCA South Florida, where we empower women and eliminate racism. So thank you all and have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.